Hello and welcome to Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely, and with me, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. The saga of the presidential candidate whose ne'er-do-well son has some embarrassing emails that have been recently on a laptop continues. The other day, some 50 former intelligence officials wrote an open letter in which they asserted that all of this talk of emails and laptops are nothing but Russian disinformation. Now, what's interesting about it is what they said is that it has all the classic earmarks. I think they mean hallmarks, but they say earmarks of a Russian information operation. And then they say, we want to emphasize that we do not know if the emails are genuine or not, and that we do not have evidence of Russian involvement. But our experience makes us deeply suspicious that the Russian government played a significant role in this case. So, in other words, we have no evidence that a Russian government was involved. Nonetheless, let's pretend that we do and just go on as if nothing happened and just keep saying that this is a Russian operation. There are two interesting things about this. First of all, the 50 signatories include Clapper and Brennan, the two architects of the Russiagate hoax. And of course, there are all the usual guys. Michael Hayden, who was the National Security Agency chief under George W. Bush, Michael Morell, CIA chief under Obama. So it's interesting that the Russiagate crowd is back again telling us about the evil of Russia. The second interesting thing is that John Ratcliffe, the current head of national intelligence, has explicitly stated that there is no Russian involvement in this. The FBI and the Department of Justice have all said no Russian involvement. Yet these former intelligence people insist that there is Russian intelligence, even though they have no access to any intelligence. So what's your take, Peter?
Well, of course, these are all credentialed people, okay? And I suppose that if you were to put all of their years of service in the national security apparatus, it would probably span hundreds of years, okay? No, it's because they're credentialed, because they're part of the establishment. They're the ones that curated the foreign policy that we have today, and they want it back, and they want to maintain it, okay? And so what they're doing is they're trying to kill two birds with one stone. They're trying to, number one, ignore any fact that comes your way that would give evidence that Russia didn't do it, and of course, it's putting a target on Trump's head. Okay, discredit his foreign policy, which is pretty easy to do, but nonetheless. And I guess a third point here: this is obviously the national security state backing the Biden candidacy here. Okay, because any slight aberration from what the interagency consensus is forbidden. It should be all doubts should be casted down upon it, and your voice should be silenced because you're not part of the interagency consensus. And they want to make sure that no one can question the national security state. Believe me, why should we believe you? You have what? How many hundreds of years collective experience bringing American foreign policy to where it is now? A disaster on every single front. Okay, we have a pandemic, the economy is in the gutter, and you want more money for the national security state because you know better than we do. How? What do you missed the end of the Soviet Union? You missed 9/11, the weapons of mass destruction. And your hundreds of years of collective knowledge, you keep saying this, that Russia is going to fall apart. Well, it still hasn't fallen apart. Okay, what is your road record to give us any confidence that what you have to say about anything has any validity whatsoever? As a matter of fact, I'm glad you signed that letter. I'm glad you all stood up because we all know who did this train wreck in the first place.
Yes, that's absolutely right. What was also interesting in that is that there's a moment saying, well, this is, of course, a Russian operation because Trump is down in the polls, and therefore Russia needs to do something dramatic because, of course, Russia wants Trump to lose, and that even if Biden wins, this will be a shadow over a Biden presidency. You know, that's an interesting little faux pas because you think, yeah, that's exactly what you did in the last days of the Obama administration when you hooked up that whole Russia hoax story, Russia collusion with Trump story, when again, with 2 weeks to go before Trump becomes president, you came out with that ridiculous intelligence commission, which was commissioned by Obama, which, on the basis of no evidence, you asserted that, in fact, Russia interfered in this election in order to secure the election of Trump. And, of course, that has overshadowed the Trump administration, hobbled him from the first day. So it's a kind of interesting disclosure that, yeah, that's exactly the way they're thinking, because these are the people who are behind that collusion hoax.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because that's probably the most important issue I've been thinking about. We talked about it privately yesterday for a few minutes. But yes, this brewing scandal around this candidate, it's not going to go away, George. Okay, that's for sure. And in a way, it's kind of like Comey going to Trump in January of 2017 with the dossier. Basically, it's a form of intimidation. Is that, we in the intelligence community, well, we think it was a Russian-run operation. However, other people could be involved. I mean, again, they're going to create this morass where it's pulling people into it because there's no deviation from the interagency consensus. No, we're going to have another war in Syria. We're going to stay in Iraq. We're going to stay in Afghanistan, and we're going to have another battle group, aircraft carrier battle group against China. No talk with the North Koreans, and we're going to get our hands on that oil in Venezuela. Joe, you can do what you want, but there's the agenda. You get my point here, okay? What they want to do is the national security state wants to capture the policy for themselves. They don't want any interference, okay? Because they believe they're invincible, but you know what? They're utter failures on every single level here. But this is a grift. I mean, these people in a Biden administration, how many of the 50 there that are probably still at middle age, a little bit over, could be a good use in the administration? I mean, it cuts a lot of different ways here. But it not only, are they thinking about a little more than a week before the election, but if Joe does get elected, this is not going to go away, and they want to be able to manage it.
Yes. Yes, without question, because we know that this crisis will not go away because these are serious issues that are being raised here. I mean, whether it's criminal, I don't know, but it sure looks like it. And therefore, this is going to be a scandal that will immediately overshadow a Biden presidency. And as we were discussing yesterday, it is quite likely that within a few months, Biden will be faced with a crisis whether he can actually continue in office with this issue hanging over him, or whether he would be better off removing himself and allowing his essentially neophyte vice president to take over. And then these people are just going to have, run riot.
We have to keep in mind here, I mean, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of homework on this one here, but how many people in Joe's orbit right now were in his orbit when he was vice president? So the question is going to be, what did you know and when did you know it? I mean, it's going to suck a lot of people in, okay? I mean, and these are legitimate questions here. Because as we've said in a series of videos already, there is physical evidence. This is a forensic investigation, unlike the Russiagate hoax, which was just based on innuendos and anonymous sources. Okay, you couldn't grab onto it. Okay, and that the narrative kept collapsing because there were a few people like us that say, but what about this? It doesn't make any sense, and these two things aren't connected together, and that doesn't mean what it means, and that's just outright a falsehood. Okay, but these are, we're looking at money moving around the world. We're looking at correspondence, wired accounts, and things like this. And what's interesting here is that the candidate's orbit, they're actually giving credence to this story by not denying it, and so that gives it oxygen to continue.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there is a very basic distinction from Russiagate, because the moment the Christopher Steele dossier was published, refutations of it. Chiefly, there was Michael Cohen. He stated explicitly Michael Cohen was in Prague. And then right away we found out in no time that Michael Cohen has never been to Prague. So right away there was an attempt, there was a refutation. Here, the Biden people are just simply saying, no, we're not going to talk about it. Only scurrilous, scummy people and Russians want to talk about it.
And what, Carter Page had a 10% stake in Rosneft?
Yeah, 19% stake in the.
He would be a billionaire. He'd be a trillionaire.
Right. Exactly right. No, I think that's right. It's a kind of also an interesting insight, because again, when we go back to the Russiagate hoax, the persecution of Flynn, it all points back to Obama, because Obama kept saying this is the least corrupt administration in U.S. history. Yet the Obama people had to have known for 8 years that the vice president was essentially, his son was making millions entirely due to his father. So they had to know in one place after another, suddenly this ne'er-do-well son is just raking in millions. And
do you get it? People need to convince me that Obama's Secretary of State in his second term didn't know what Joe was doing in Ukraine. I mean, the Secretary of State didn't have any contact with the American ambassador, Masha. Okay, right. What have you been working on? Oh, I've been busy. Okay, yes. Yeah. You can't believe it. It's a headache here. Okay. Right. Yeah, fighting corruption. Yeah, fighting corruption. Okay.
Fighting corruption, exactly.
No, that's my point, George. I mean, these people have not been asked any questions. Now they're going to be asked questions, and hopefully it's under oath. I mean, if you don't know anything, just say you don't know anything. Say it under oath. Fine, next person here. It's not a witch hunt, okay? But I mean, you're right. I mean, we have the impression, I'm going to use a very specific word, impression, that there was a lot of, if not illegal things, what most people would think is corrupt for an elected official to be doing. We need transparency here. But you're right, this always goes back to Obama's ego and his narcissism, and it's going to be tarnished. It is tarnished already.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it also goes to show that the media were just simply asleep at the switch for 8 years. You mean you didn't know about all this? You weren't following the antics of Biden's family, because it's not just the one ne'er-do-well son. We got the rest of his family were all getting rich through sharing the name of the vice president. So no one was wondering about this. So, you have the media obsessing about this ridiculous nonsense of Russiagate, of this woman having a 20-minute meeting in Trump Tower. How much oxygen has been used up on that idiotic meeting? And yet this whole thing was going on for 8 years, and no one.
The meeting in Trump Tower, there was no exchange. There was no exchange. Okay, nothing. But what we have in this case are lots of money or wires being sent all around I mean, he was a globetrotter apparently. Okay, so I mean, there's forensic evidence here. So
Yep.
the interesting thing is for me, I mean, it's not interesting that there's corruption. No, there's a lot of it. Okay, but your point that nobody really wants to bring it up. Let's be very fair to our viewers here. Is it an accident that this has been released now? I don't know the answer to that question. And those that want to entertain that question, I think, have a perfect right to do that. Okay. I mean, it's called opposition research, and that's how it's phrased. Okay. Is it a coincidence? Is the timing a coincidence? I don't know. Probably not. Okay. But we always have to draw the distinction here of someone's political motive to put this into the public sphere, but the actual evidence that may point to shady, if not illegal behavior. You can separate the two. They're not one and the same thing.
Right, but again, you can see how the media adopt different standards. So when we had the Trump's tax returns, no one questioned the illegality of the New York Times having in its possession Trump's tax returns. And no one has said, we demand to see it. The New York Times must release them and show every single document. No one had demanded it. So same thing with the Access Hollywood tape. That had been sitting there 11 years in the NBC archives, and then suddenly, 2 days before the debate, it's released. No one was saying, hey, well, who was behind this? Who was behind suddenly releasing it at this key juncture? Coincidence. So, yeah, that's right. But just going back to the point that we were making, I think that if Biden does indeed get the Democrats over the finish line, I think that once that's done, the Democrats have no further use for.
Okay, George, let's do this. Let's do a separate video on that, because I think it's you and I have thought about. We've already talked about it. A really good thing to talk about, and I think we need a separate video to kind of explore things. Okay, so let's hold that one.
Okay, all right then. So we're going to keep watching this and commenting further. All right, so thank you very much, Peter. And remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.